Welcome to my channel. My name is Alexander Verbitsky, and today we're going to compare Slate Digital FG2A model to not one but three hardware LA2A units. Anytime somebody claims that the modeling plugin doesn't sound exactly like the hardware unit they're used to on forums or Facebook groups, we get a bunch of comments stating that no two analog units sound alike anyway. So today we're going to see just how true this statement is. My goal is to conduct this test in the most scientific way possible, and also to make sure that anybody who wants to recreate in their listening environment would be able to do so. So instead of renting a few units and patching them into converters in my studio, I decided to use two different services that allow any of us to run audio through hardware units in the cloud. I'm of course talking about Access Analog and Mix Analog. The services work in slightly different ways. I have been using Access Analog for a while, and I love their plugin and how it integrates with Pro Tools. And this is my first time using Mix Analog. So while I might not be quite as versed in the functionality of this service, it seems like instead of having a plugin that you can put in your DAW, it only allows you to upload files to their site and process them that way, which at first glance seems like a less productive thing to do. To me, it's harder to judge processing on an individual track without the rest of the mix being present around it, providing context, but we'll make it work. To be completely clear, this video is not sponsored by anyone. In fact, this is my very first video review of anything, so please bear with me. For this test, I'm using a raw multitrack of Atrophy by Doppler Shift. You can download these multitracks as well as many others on Cambridge Music Technology website for non-commercial educational purposes. I will leave the link in the description below. What I have in my session is not a mix. I basically took 3-4 minutes to do a rough balance and use Basics SSL channel strip to brighten a few dull tracks and to control some of the transients that were poking out too much. I think it's important to evaluate gear in context, not just in solo, though we will do a little bit of that too. So no processing is applied to the red tracks, besides the various LA2A models that I will go through in a minute. First thing I did is I gain staged all the plugins and the hardware with 1K tones, ensuring the same amount of gain reduction and output level. I did not use meters on the units. I'd rather used iZotope Inside to set all my levels to avoid any anomalies due to inconsistent meter calibration. I also tweaked high frequency emphasis on each unit to react as closely to each other as possible. So I really tried to think of everything I could, but if you think I missed something or something could have been done better, let me know in the comments down below. I would be more than happy to adjust my method if I do another comparison like this in the future. Tracks we have here are FG2A on the top, Access Analog LA2A second, and two LA2As from the Mix Analog at the bottom. First thing, let's open up Inside and look at the harmonics generated by each unit to determine just how much tonal difference do these units really have. As we can see, Access Analog model is probably the most colorful of the bunch. Two units from the Mix Analog look nearly identical, and FG2A looks very similar to them, though probably somewhere in between. And something else to note, see how harmonics move in and out on the analog units while they stay completely constant on FG2A. Now overall, not a bad start. I also have to mention that the gain pot on the Access Analog model was pretty dirty, and it took me a few tries to set it to the position that wasn't crackling. So I'm kind of wondering if it's just in general a unit that needs servicing, and that might be one of the reasons why it seems to have a little bit of higher noise floor and also more color to it. Now let's listen to some raw vocals. Let's go to that section. And I'm picking just a section that is very dynamic, goes from very quiet to very loud. Let's see how that sounds with no compression in context of the mix, and we'll do some solo playback later on.
Still
Now, I'm going to play back each track individual. Again, FG2A, Axis Analog, LA2A, and then 2 mix analog units. I'll play them one after another, and then I'm going to play one more time, switching between each unit, kind of just like going back and forth, so we can see if we can spot any tonal and compression characteristic difference between the units. Here we go.
still we sit and wait. It's gone, but still we wait. For nothing, nothing stop.
So let's do switching one more time, but now in solo.
Raise your pulse, breath to waste. The time is ripe, but still we sit and wait. It's gone, but still we wait. For nothing, nothing stop.
Was a little issue at the end, but you get the overall idea here. So even though I use 1K tones to calibrate outputs, with the more complex signal like the vocal, levels did feel a little bit inconsistent. And what I thought was very interesting is that mixed analog units felt a little bit more different than the rest. I think I could easily comp FG2A and Access Analog LA2A together without anybody ever noticing, but mixed analog units reacted a little bit differently and in a way more aggressively clamped down on the vocals. So let's compare these units on the bass guitar, and at the very end I'll do a few bonus tests for you if you want to stick around for those. Now let's switch between them. This is very interesting, because for this test, I feel like mixed analog units in FG2A were much closer. In particular, the first unit of the mixed analog sounded very close to FG2A, while the Axis analog unit had the most low-end emphasis and just roundness to it, and also clamped on the transients way less than the other three units. All in all, I think it's fair to say that all of these compressors sound great, and while you might pick one over the other for, let's say, more low-end control versus more low-end emphasis, or like fatter sound, there isn't really like a clear winner. As we saw, they performed quite differently on vocals versus on bass guitar, and I'm sure depending on the source you pick, all of them would perform slightly differently too. But the fact that there isn't a clear winner or a clearly inferior unit, I think is a great achievement in itself. In my opinion, whether you use FG2A or at least one of these hardware units for your song, you're getting the behavior and the tone of LA2A either way. Now, it's not the most versatile, nor is it the best sounding compressor for everything, but for things that it works for, I think it's really hard to beat, and now we have so many options to get access to that tool. So whether you want to go with subscription, buy it outright from Slate, you want to rent it out from one of these other services to get the actual hardware unit, possibilities are pretty much limitless. Now, if you stuck around for that long, let's do the bonus tests. Let's bring out the good old, that's right, CLA2A. And I'm not going to comment on how it sounds, I'll let you decide. And just let me know in the comments down below, what are your thoughts? I'll quickly play it on bass first, and then we'll go back to the vocals, and I'll do the same type of switching that we've been doing lately here. And now, the last way I want to demonstrate the subtle differences between all the units, but also to kind of highlight how insignificant the deviation really is, I'm going to hard pan some of the units hard left and some of them hard right, and show you a few sections with different combinations of units being panned each way. So listen carefully to the shifts in stereo field and also watch for the output meters. If things feel dead center, the units perform identically. If the image tilts left or right, the unit that's on the quieter side is compressing more. And I'm going to give it away just a little bit. Even the two matched units from mixed analog compress slightly differently. And at the same time, when switching to other units, it's not going to be like a night and day difference either.
Raise your pulse, breath to waste. The time is ripe, but still we sit and wait. It's gone, but still we wait for nothing, nothing stop.
So I hope this was useful, or at the very least interesting. Let me know your thoughts. Should I do more of this? Should I do any adjustments to the format? I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts. Cheers.